welcome to another edition of the now titled Syndrome with the Allies.
Just got a new title now?
Just got a new title. Second to last episode. Finally put a title on it.
Sounds good.
How you doing, bud?
I'm doing good.
Bloodworth, the only one not alarmed by the way I start the episodes because you watch everything Easy Allies does.
I can't claim to have watched the whole episodes. I've definitely seen the beginning and end of just about everything.
Yep.
Couple minutes at the beginning, couple minutes at the end.
Bloodworth, it's time to go back to the beginning.
Okay.
It's time to go back to the origins. Where are you from? Where were you born?
I'm from Palmetto, Florida.
Palmetto?
Palmetto. It's just like
One word. Palmetto.
One M in there.
Is that like...
That's not where I was born. I was actually born in Texas, but I was like, my parents moved like 6 weeks after.
Oh, okay.
So
you were still like a baby.
Yeah.
When you moved to Palmetto, Florida. Where in Florida is that? North, south, east, west?
West, just south side of Tampa Bay.
Okay.
The Skyway Bridge is right there. Anytime you go fishing, you see the Skyway Bridge. Go to the beach, see the Skyway Bridge.
Do you fishing? Did you fish a lot growing up?
Yeah, with my dad, yeah, we'd go out fishing a lot. He'd take this tiny little boat that had no business being in the bay, way out there under the bridge and stuff. And yeah.
What is your favorite video game representation of fishing?
Ooh. I feel like there was a recent one that was really good. Oh, yeah, Final Fantasy 15 was really good.
Nice!
I really like that.
Yes, good call. All right, Blood. So you're living in Florida. Tell me about that. Tell me about your youth. Like, did you want to pursue video games? Because I know you go way back to the Atari. That was like your video game origins, right?
Yeah, well, there's the Atari, and then there's also, like Pac-Man machines and pinball machines and all the bars that, my mom and dad were at. Just like, we'd be at the bar, or like even like little poker things on the bar.
Yeah.
Do some of that.
Like the video poker machines?
But yeah,
nice.
We'd be there and like, I get a quarter, and then, so that was some of the earliest stuff. And then, yes, there was some Atari. Wasn't super into the Atari, but definitely played it here and there. And then, like the first thing that was like actually like ours at home was the Commodore 64 PC, 1987.
Jeez.
And had my first RPG on there, which was Legacy of the Ancients.
Yes.
Had Maniac Mansion on there, which was funny because I couldn't understand like how to really play and beat that game until it came out on the NES and Nintendo Power had it, and it's like, okay, now I can finish the game.
Nice.
But then there's other stuff. There's like this game called Airborne Ranger, which is like you like drop in, like you parachute into a map, and then like you work your way through the map like top down style. We recently on the Q&A talked about Captain Zap, which was like I guess in Europe was a Flash Gordon game, but they like rebranded it in the US. And then another big thing with the Commodore 64 was there was like basically like a magazine subscription called Lodestar, and Lodestar was like one of the ways that you kind of like the syntax that you put in to boot up a game.
Yeah.
And so it was basically like the Commodore 64 version of a demo disc.
Cool.
Like you would just get this disc in the mail, and it have all these games on it that you probably would have never heard of any other way. And you just stick it in there and like load star and then whatever the name of the game was, and
that is
keep
fascinating.
getting games that way.
So, to go back to Legacy of the Ancients, do you credit Legacy of the Ancients as like your first video game obsession?
Obsession?
Maybe not obsession. Might be too strong a word, but is it the one that you really that got its hooks in you?
It's definitely the first time that I had ever, played anything like that was like kind of a long process or whatever, because it had a lot of the same elements of early RPGs and a lot of stuff. Like when I went back to it later, as a teenager and as an adult, that I was just kind of shocked at like how much detail and how much stuff was in there. And so you had the overworld, so similar to like a Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest, but your character was like literally just like a white stick figure.
Yeah.
It's like there's a head and there's arms and legs, but it was just all white, and then you walk across. But where you could traverse kind of depended on your equipment as well, and like how fast you would go and how much food you would take. Like would depend on are you going through a swamp? Like are you going over mountains? Well, you need to like go to a shop and buy climbing gear.
Oregon
to get
Trail
over
vibes.
Well, Oregon Trail is kind of more like it's kind of a step-by-step process where this was like a big, map that you could cross.
Yeah.
And then if you wanted to go over water, there were boats that you could get. And then like eventually to get to the warlord's fortress or whatever, like you had to unlock the Pegasus and like fly over there. Yeah. But sort of you had random encounters as you walked around. But what's interesting about how Legacy of the Ancients did it compared to say like a Dragon Quest or a Final Fantasy is they wouldn't always be a battle. They could be a merchant. They could be like just a traveler. Yeah. There were some types of creatures that maybe they would attack you. Maybe you could trade with them in some way. And so it's like you always have these things of like, okay, do I try to talk to them or do I just straight up fight them?
That's what I love about Hand of Fate is those just the random encounters. Sometimes it's for your benefit. Sometimes it's an ambush.
Yeah. And then when you get into dungeons, then dungeons are in the first-person mode. So that kind of maze kind of thing, where you're just like walking through, and then there would be like trap doors to go down to the next level.
I remember your GameTrailers video.
Yeah, and
everyone should watch it.
And the graphics in there were totally different. Like when you see a monster out in the overworld, it's this like little pixely thing that looks like something out of Space Invaders. When you see a monster in a dungeon, it's this big, huge thing that's coming right up in your face, and it's getting closer and closer and closer.
So rad.
Giant slugs and things like that.
All right, Blood. So tell me about your mission then. Like, did you played Legacy of the Ancients? You're like, I want to talk about video games. You came out west. What was the spark?
Yeah, I mean, it was weird. It was a kind of a progressive thing in various different ways. If you watched some of the fundraiser streams we did, like you saw, like I did some stuff in newspaper. I did some. Well, before that, I was like drawing. I was like getting a sketchbook and drawing stuff out of Nintendo Power. I was reading a lot of Nintendo Power. Actually, one of the things I did when the next computer that we got like many years later was like a 286, and it was a hand-me-down. So the guy before was like he was like an architect, and it had some like drafting software and stuff on there as well as spreadsheets. And so I used the spreadsheets to.
Is this spreadsheet origins now for Bloodworth?
To catalog Nintendo Powers.
Dude.
And so I would go through every Nintendo Power and like figure out, like what games were in it. And so like I would have a game name and it would be like in this issue on this page and like every instance. So that if I wanted to go back and read about a game, like I could look it up and find it in the right issue.
Fantastic.
But then so then in middle school, junior high, I got into the school newspaper there and wrote some video game-based articles there that were just like a paragraph or whatever. Yeah. And then in high school, I read there was an article I read in the paper about a concert for a band I knew, and I'm like, this is weird that they would write about this because like who knows about this group. Yeah. And then I like looked down on the bylines or whatever, and I saw that it was a student writer, and that they had this student section of the paper that they published once a month.
Yeah.
And so then I picked up the phone and called them and was like, hey, how do I get in on this? And
no way.
So then I went into the local newspaper every month, and so we'd have like a meeting once a month to like plan out the articles, and then we would come in over the next few weeks and like write the articles. We had editors there.
You're in high school at the time.
Yeah.
But they're professionals.
Yeah. And like book photographers to come down to the local game store and, take photos. Because the game store there, they'd let you basically like pay $5 to like play anything that they had in stock. And they just stick it in the Super Nintendo or the PlayStation. Yeah. And so I could have a photographer come down there, take a shot of me playing the game. And there we go. That's my screenshot. That's the only way I knew how to get any kind of screenshots. Although somehow, they managed to find some other art and stuff that Nintendo had put out there. I don't remember how that process worked, but I know that like there was definitely some like big full screen art in some places too.
And then was Nintendo Life your first?
No, I wasn't at Nintendo Live. So Planet GameCube,
Planet GameCube,
which is now
that's
Nintendo
right.
World
That's
Report.
right. Yeah.
So after high school, so I went. I was really not sure what I was supposed to do because I was into art. I was also in radio at that time. Newspaper led to radio, so I worked in radio for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And then
what would you do on the radio?
I mean, at first I was just volunteering, like support work and like listening to things and just like just.
Did you broadcast?
For sure. Like I eventually
tell me,
manning
I'm fascinated.
I was manning the board.
Doing
all the technical stuff, like playing the tracks, playing the ads, doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
I wasn't like on-air personality, like
okay. Behind the scenes.
But the people that were like sometimes they would throw me on a mic and ask me questions or whatever here and there.
Yeah. Like what? What is one of the questions they asked you?
I don't know, just whatever we were talking about.
Okay. Awesome.
So I had all these different competing things, and then also like I was doing like we would one of the churches I went to, like we had concerts there, and so I would do sound for those concerts too, and so it was like I was like music and art and writing like all at the same time.
Yeah, that was my next question, Blood. As you know, I wanted to get a little further into it, but I know you love music, and one of my favorite produced shows of all time is Backtrack on GameTrailers.
Oh yes. Okay, yeah.
What got you into that? Like your love of music.
What got me into that? I mean, and specifically in terms of game music, it was probably around the era of Super Metroid, Donkey Kong Country.
Okay.
And
David Wise, best in the biz.
So there was when Super Metroid first came out, like it just showed up at Blockbuster. We didn't know when games would release. We knew Super Metroid was coming. But then it was like we went to Blockbuster and like, oh, they have Super Metroid. It's out.
Isn't that a crazy thought? That we like, you'd call a game store and be like, hey, did you guys get that in? No, still waiting.
Right.
It's crazy.
And I was just like staying over at somebody's house that had like a big stereo system, and so we were playing. It was the first time I'd ever played anything on like a big stereo system rather than just through like a little TV.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, this is crazy.
Super Metroid.
Yeah. And so then I asked for a stereo for like birthday or Christmas or something at some point, and I wanted one that had it has to have like the auxiliary in so I can plug the the Super Nintendo into it.
Yeah.
And then from there I was just kind of like how I record music now. Like I'd get cassette tapes and I'd stick them in and I would record Secret of Mana and Mega Man X and all kinds of stuff. And then Nintendo Power would have CDs for things like Donkey Kong Country and the N64 collection, which actually has some songs on it that were never really used in any games.
Whoa.
As well as like a whole bunch of like sound effects from Killer Instinct on that CD. So yeah, that stuff was really where it was, is that and Nintendo even had a marketing push called Play It Loud.
Yeah.
For those games where they were really focusing on the music.
Play It Loud.
Yeah. So.
Predates the IMAX. They know.
Oh, and I also with the newspaper stuff and the stuff with my teachers, I was actually trading games with some of them.
Your teachers?
Yeah, with my English teachers and with my editors at the paper. And so it was because of one of my editors at the paper that I got to play Shadowrun because she had Shadowrun. So like I traded her for like some Final Fantasy. And she traded me Shadowrun, and we played through them, and then gave them back to each other. And then,
no way.
And then one of my, I think my freshman English teacher, we were like studying opera, and then we went to an opera and stuff. And it's like, hey, you got to see this opera. And so like I recorded the Final Fantasy VI opera and the ending, which was so epic and so musically involved.
Yeah.
And like showed that to my English teacher and let her borrow that, and so.
That is really cool to hear, Bloodworth. I like that story.
So anyway, as I was wrapping up high school, I was looking at like all kinds of different options. I was looking at DigiPen, but DigiPen was so fresh back then that like my guidance counselors were like, oh, I don't know, they don't look like a real university or whatever, and so they were kind of pushing me away from that. And then I was also looking where we were. The big art school there was Ringling.
You're still in Florida now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there was also like Art Institute and then everything. But I really was just like, like I said, I was at this crossroads, and I just sort of like just put it in God's hands. And I was like, okay, I think if I'm gonna go do the art thing, like if I get into ringling, then I'll do that. And then that's sort of like it was like almost like this judgment call that I had to make, because it's like I was accepted to ringling but not accepted into the animation program. And then it was like looking at the other stuff and like, I don't think I actually want to do any of that other stuff.
So you applied for animation though at first?
Yeah. And then, so from there, I was just sort of like, okay, like, God, just show me where you want me to go.
So you were gonna like try to go into game development? Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was trying to be an animator at that point. And then this other opportunity came up to go spend a year at this missions organization, which previously, up until this point, I thought was where crazy people went, because like you wake up 5 a.m, you're there for a whole year, like you're kind of locked into their rules and everything, and it's like I just felt like, okay, this is where I need to go. And so I did that for a year and a half, and then with that I did a lot of live events. I actually went on tour with some bands and things like that. For a couple months.
But you're behind the scenes.
Yeah, because what we were doing is like we were like promoting summer missions trips and stuff, like getting kids to come out and go out around the world and like get a perspective on the world outside of their little hometown, wherever they were, in Oklahoma or Arkansas or wherever. And so I was basically like the road manager for our teams, because they would have people that were like first-year interns go out for like a week or two at a time and then come back and then work through those leads, whereas I would be like on like a smaller team that was like, we were just always on the road. And so I would just come back, pick up a new group of people, go back out there, and then I like was in charge of like the budget. I had to email stuff back, which was at the time like ridiculous, because we would be
dial up. This is so
we'd be in host homes. Like people would like host us for the night before we had to go to the next venue, and like I'd have to dial up into the network and like email these spreadsheets in of like all the cards that people had collected with people's info.
Yeah.
And it's like basically like, while everyone else is sleeping, this is what I'm doing. Yeah. And so like basically for me, like being on tour was you're always awake, you're always working, and if you're asleep, you're gonna get woken up soon, because I had the bag of money. So if somebody needed to stop and they had to get gas or had to get like snacks at the gas station, it's like, okay, let me go up and like make sure you have the money and make sure you give me the receipt, because if they didn't have the receipt, then I had to pay that money out of my own pocket, which I basically didn't have,
Yeah.
But still a lot of fun.
Yeah.
15-passenger van felt like home for a while.
That's jolly.
Because like I'd like learn how to like strap in, like, all right, put the seatbelt around me this way so that like if somebody slams on the brakes, I'm just gonna sleep through it. Yeah.
So you do that.
I do that, and then I feel like the next step was LA.
Yeah, tell me how you
come out to LA and support other artists, and not very much more than that in my head, but I knew that like very, very strongly. And while I was there, like I had connected to like a lot of other people, both at the ministry where I was at, and then plus like just like when I was on the road and stuff, just like hooking up with bands and like, hey, like, like we should try to like basically. So what was in my head at that time was essentially what a social network would be now, but it didn't exist. I was just trying to think like, okay, it was like, well, you do modeling and you do photography and like you're a musician and you're a filmmaker, and like it was just like how do we get everybody together,
Yeah.
But I knew one way or another that like, okay, I want to come out here and like it's not really about me, it's about supporting other artists and like trying to help make them more successful or whatever. And so I came out here on a bus. A Russian family that I didn't know picked me up from the bus station, stayed with them for 6 weeks, tried to figure out what I was supposed to do next. Yeah. And then right about as they were going to kick me out of the place, there was somebody else that had stayed with them previously that came over and was like, oh, okay, oh, you're really into arts and stuff like that. It's like, well, like my church does a lot with the arts. And so like, and I know this artist that just got married, they're having a housewarming party, like come. And so like I went to that party, met some other people, found some other people that were willing to let me stay at their place. went to another place, and then eventually, like, it was like the third place I was at here.
Keely's place.
Where the guy was like actually able to like show me like, okay, this is how you ride the buses. This is where you can go to get a temp job and all that. And I had so much like experience, office experience and stuff, because when I was at the ministry, like I also did like a lot of live event registration, a lot of spreadsheets, a lot of like analytics. And like stuff for TV show and
Jack
stuff
of
like
all
that.
trades.
And
Bloodworth.
so I went into this temp agency downtown, like took a bus into downtown LA.
Yeah.
Went to this temp agency, did
How
an
old
interview.
Are you at this time?
20.
Okay.
And I had a message waiting for me by the time I got back home. And then that placement that they put me in was the Union Rescue Mission downtown. It's a homeless shelter.
Yeah.
And in product donations. And I was a temp for like a couple of weeks, and then they hired me, and then I worked there for like the next 6 years.
At the shelter?
Yeah.
Dude, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that's like, and I did all this accounting stuff and like working with like basically like anything.
So no video games whatsoever, not even in your mind.
Not really at that point. Like
shelter.
I was, like I'd bought a used PlayStation. I was playing Chrono Cross and Final Fantasy VII and stuff. But but there I was doing product donations. So basically anytime like somebody would drop off a bag of clothes, or if Nestle would give like a big pile of like canned cheese and stuff like that, like I had to like catalog all of that, figure out what it was worth, and like give it to the actual accountants to like so that we could track like what all we're bringing in. And then not only that, the most difficult part of it was tracking, because they wanted to know like what department we would go to. It's like, okay, is this going to the men's department? Is this going to transportation? Is this going to the kitchen? And it's physical products. So we would find out that like we would give it to one department, and then they wouldn't need it right away, and then they would end up giving it to somebody else. And like, wait, no, you can't do that without telling me. We gotta track that. We gotta give that to accounting. And so it was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And then we had warehouses full of stuff eventually, and international shipments and stuff we got involved with. Like basically because there was so much women's clothing, it was just piles and pallets of women's clothing. The only thing to do with it was to send it overseas.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I like had to do like fielding a lot of phone calls. It was actually a really great job to be like starting out in LA.
Yeah.
Because I was doing dispatch for well, not actually dispatch, but I was booking trucks to go to different parts of town. So I had a map right there above my desk.
Yeah.
And so somebody would call me and it's like, okay, I live in Reseda and I've got like a box of clothes, and like, okay, Reseda, okay, we go there on Mondays.
You're an expert at directions now.
So I learned where like all these different places around LA were.
So you're there for 6 years, you said?
I was there for 6 years, and so
And what pulled you away from that?
So what I was doing was in so like after I'd been doing that for a year or so. I mean, I had also been even starting before I'd come out to LA. Like I started getting. Reading some websites, some fan sites and stuff, getting really interested in like the Dolphin, which, was the, pre-name of the GameCube, and was on some forums and things like that. And they had gone through some like website changes. And so there's some things that when they updated the website, they took away some features that they had before that like automatically put the articles into the forums for people to comment on the articles before we had, basically YouTube comments.
Yeah.
But it was just like a forum thing. And so me and another guy volunteered to like kind of take that process over. And so he programmed like a little applet that would turn the HTML or the plain text into the code for the forums.
Yeah.
And so we could both just like open that thing up, whatever article they put up, we would put into the app, it would convert it. All right, we'd post it in the forums, and then people could talk about it. And
I know you watched *Halt and Catch Fire*. This is making me think of it. This seems like an episode because, they're trying to get the internet up and different sites and different like pros and cons. Sounds like that.
And
you're at the forefront of that. That's awesome.
So and then 2002 or so, maybe it was later 2001 that they first started talking about this, but they. One of the guys there that was on staff, and Planet GameCube was still an all volunteer site. Even now, Nintendo World Report is pretty much all volunteer. They're like, look, your forum posts like look really good and well thought out. Like, would you, consider like coming on staff with us? And so I did that. but I was doing it and just kind of like more of a support role. Like I was like putting codes into the database and things like that.
So you just got a call one day. They saw your work and
they just talked to me, like PM'd me on the forums.
Yeah.
And then from there, I hadn't written anything. Like for whatever reason in my mind, like I didn't feel like the stuff I wrote at the newspaper really counted as writing a review. So it's like, I've never written a review before, but I'll try it out. And so, and one of the things that was really nice about that site is that they do multiple reviews.
Yeah.
So like, I think when Mario Sunshine came out, like 3 or 4 different people did reviews for Mario Sunshine. They like wrote up their own. And I don't know like how they ever eventually like work that out with Metacritic, or if they care about Metacritic or not. But so anyways, they had already done a review for Pikmin, but it was like, I just want to write a review and we can put up another Pikmin review. So I wrote Pikmin, and they're like, oh, this is really...
That was your first professional review?
Yeah,
Pikmin?
so they really like that. And then like months later, I get brought up to senior staff, and I like start editing other people's writing and all that kind of stuff.
Professional.
And so...
Were you Dan at this point?
I think I've only ever been Dan to like a handful of specific people.
Okay.
You know, so like Johnny would call me Dan.
Yeah.
I don't know if Billy would ever call me Dan. There were definitely a lot of people that called me Bloodworth.
Were people ever
with Planet GameCube? Like a lot of us didn't know each other's actual names for a while, or we didn't use them, you know, very often. So
aliases.
So yeah, so like Michael Cole is the younger plumber, which we always just call him TYP. Steven Rodriguez is Windy Man, which I forget what exactly that was based on.
Were people ever intimidated by your last name?
Intimidated? I don't know about that, but there is a funny quote that actually has some language in it, so I won't actually quote it.
Oh.
But for the first time that like we went to E3 and we like saw each other. Everyone saw me for the first time, and I was wearing a black leather jacket, and people were like, whoa, nobody expected Bloodworth to look like that.
Intimidation.
Long-haired black leather jacket.
Metal. When's the last time someone commented on your last name? The most recent encounter.
Oh, goodness. It could have been in the last week. It just happens all the time. It's just like somebody looking, like, oh, you're tall. Like, yeah. Like
when you go to...
Like a clerk or something, like when you hand them a card.
When you go to Starbucks, do you say Bloodworth or like Daniel?
Oh, yeah. Usually I would only introduce myself as Daniel. Okay. Yeah. It's just kind of different circles.
Yeah.
Yeah, pick up on Bloodworth and just go with that. And when, like in school, there were just a ton of Daniels in my classes anyway. So like one of my teachers was relieved because there were 3 of us in her class. And one of us went by Daniel, which was me.
Yeah.
One went by Dan, another one by Danny. And she's like, thank goodness.
Danny.
She was so happy.
Yeah. It's great. So you're at Nintendo. How long are you there for?
So I was doing Planet GameCube in the evenings after work. And too much at work. I actually got in trouble with that a little bit.
Too much on your plate.
I was just obsessed with it.
Yeah.
You know, I was just like, all right, nothing's happening right now, lunch break or whatever. And I would go and like, you know, ban some people on the forums or whatever. You know, it's like, we'd actually have situations that will pop up and be like emergencies. And I would feel obligated to like do something about because somebody's like posting a bunch of like porn images or something.
Yeah. Some craziness.
It's like, get rid of that. Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I got a little bit of trouble with that towards the end. But corrected. Like okay, you gotta not do that.
Get some sleep.
But I was also, I don't know what year that started, like 2004 maybe 2005. I started helping out with the film team at my church because my wife had like a TV background in college, and like I was like, okay, this would be a good way to like get her involved in something she's interested in. I don't know anything about film, but whatever. And so we do like a lot of like odd things. I would end up doing a lot of boom mic. Nice. You know, just hold the mic up above everybody like
Give
that.
it to the tall person.
But we actually, one guy did a short film that like involved like some human trafficking and stuff, and they decided that the best location for that was our basement of the house that we were living in, because the basement looked so sketch.
Yes.
So like I'm down in my own basement, like holding a boom mic. But one of the people there was also a producer at G4. And I had started putting some feelers out there, trying to like figure out like, okay, is there any way that I can like actually like earn some money writing about games?
Yeah, you weren't getting paid at Planet GameCube, right? It
Right.
was purely voluntary.
And so I found like an opening with like Tom's Hardware Guide, but then like I did the interview and everything like that, and they're like, well, we don't know for sure if we're gonna hire a permanent person, so just like pitch us some things. And like I don't know. Like I've never done the freelance thing before. It's like pitch you a thing. I don't know. What do you want me to do? And that's so like I think I did like an article for them, but like the DS launch. You know, like if you just got a DS, here's some games. You know, and like profiled a few different games. But then so that friend that's a producer at G4, she just literally emailed me one day. It was like, hey, do you want a job? And it's like, okay, sure.
There it is.
And so I went in. I worked with Jeremy Hoffman on Cheat for 2 months, and that was like right when the Wii launched. So it was pretty crazy that I went through like all of Twilight Princess like the week before it came out, and had like a stack of like 24 like purple tapes, you know, that all like had to get logged and like put in the system. But I think we got multiple episodes out of that. Plus, it was, you know, just one of the things with G4 is like that stuff goes into like this vault that anybody can pull from. So as long as everything's labeled and logged correctly, like they could go in there and find that shot that they need.
So, oh man, it's all making sense, Bloodworth. It's like everything you've done, you know, in the past is like, oh, that sounds right.
Yeah, and so then I was out of work because the set of episodes or whatever was done. We had made them. And it was December or whatever, and it's like, okay, then now you go on your way. And I was looking for one. I was looking for chances to get back into G4, because G4 was like a revolving door. Like nobody really had permanent jobs. It's like, okay, you do your run of episodes, you get laid off. Next set of episodes come up, you get hired again. And so I was just looking for like, okay, do I get on like Attack of the Show or on X-Play or whatever? I was talking to people there. And I didn't know anything about GameTrailers, but I was asking to like try to get some kind of contact. And in the midst of that, I actually got called back to my old job at the Mission for like a week because they needed somebody to like come back in and correct the books. Because even though I wrote like this huge manual of how to do my job that I had invented, basically, it wasn't all getting followed to the T, and so I had to come back in there. And like I still have bad dreams later on. About someday they're gonna call me back in and have me fix something.
Do you still visit it every once in a while?
I haven't visited there for a long time.
Okay.
Once in a while, I actually ran into my old boss at the last PSX. He was wandering around PSX with one of his kids.
What?
But he was head of our department as well as security.
Yeah.
But he's not there anymore either. So I'm not sure exactly who's still left over there that I would know. But
G4 to GameTrailers, I assume.
But yeah, so then I was playing Dragon Quest VIII, and looking for work every day, and I saw ad on Craigslist. On Craigslist for GameTrailers.
GameTrailers.
And it was like Shane had written it like for me to a T. He was like, "Have you been slaving around at a fan site for a bunch of years and not getting any paid, and you want to take the next step?" To like, what the heck is this?
Awesome.
And so Billy Berghammer.
What time is it? What time of the day is it when you see this?
Oh, it was probably like morning or early afternoon, because I would just kind of do. I would kind of.
Can we just pretend it's like 3 a.m?
It definitely wasn't, because I knew at like a certain time of day, like just the leads stopped coming in.
Okay.
You know, it's like you'd wake up, you'd read all the leads that there were, and it's like, okay, that's it. That's all the job leads I've got for the day. You know, and so I'll do something else with my time. And well, yeah, but that time I was back to writing a little bit for Nintendo World Report, a little bit more, since I wasn't working, so why not?
Yeah.
And then I had Jeremy from G4 put in a recommendation. I had Billy Berghammer from Nintendo World Report put a recommendation in. I think because they both knew Shane. They were both in those circles. Yeah. Actually, I'm trying to remember if Billy was still at... I don't think he was at Nintendo World Report still at that time. I think he might have been at Game Informer by that point. And now he's at Nintendo. actually. So that's fun. Like he eventually actually got to Nintendo. But yeah, so then I walked in to Shane's office already, like having had people highly recommend me to him. And
Pressure.
Yeah. And there was pressure, but then there was sort of like not pressure, because like a lot of like when he was asking me like, why do you think you can do this job, etc. It's like, I've been doing the job. I've been doing this stuff.
Yeah.
Like there are certain things I'm not experienced with. I don't know that much about PlayStation right now. I don't know that much about Xbox right now, but I feel like I could do this job.
Yeah.
And then he did give me a little tour of the offices. At that point, we were in the Viacom building that was on the corner.
Yeah.
So not the one that you came into, but like the one that was there that we would go for like HR meetings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he gave me a little tour of the office, and then he set me down with Def Jam Icon, which hadn't been released yet. And he's like, okay, you have 30 minutes to play this game and write as much as you can about it. So that was intense.
Yeah.
So
I remember hearing Damiani's story about that.
Yeah.
Play a game and write about it.
Yeah, they had Spiderwick Chronicles when they came in.
So no one was there from Easy Allies yet except Jones.
Yeah.
So it was Jones and you.
Yeah. So obviously Jones helped start GameTrailers.
Mm-hmm.
Shane had come in to basically build the editorial team.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Rich Brown and Johnny Chang predated Shane. I think they were already there doing support work, tech work, capture and stuff.
Okay, so you're confident with Nintendo games at this point.
Right. And I'd done some PlayStation, Xbox stuff at G4.
We haven't covered one thing as we begin to wrap this up, Bloodworth. You're kind of known now as the racing guy.
Oh, sure.
When did this all come about? Was this strictly because you gave F-Zero GX a 10 out of 10?
No. The first F-Zero I played was actually my brother's game. He bought that. And so we'd play that a lot.
Yeah.
And then I was really into it. I was super into the idea of F-Zero X.
Yeah.
With, 30 cars going 60 frames per second on the N64. It was like, that's nuts. This is awesome. So fast. And then F-Zero GX came around, and it was just bringing all that to fruition. It was just like, this is like the best manifestation like at the time that you could even imagine for this kind of game.
Yeah.
But in terms of becoming the racing game guy, that started a couple of years before that. I want to say it sort of started with probably like Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2.
All right, didn't expect that, but awesome.
So one of my roommates was into Need for Speed games, and so he had a PlayStation upstairs, and I played a little bit with that. And so when that came around for GameCube, then I did a review for GameCube. It's like, hey, I like racing games. Maybe I'll try to specialize in this or whatever. And I played that terrible Driven, terrible movie, terrible game. Sylvester Stallone.
Driven.
Do you remember? They're driving Indy cars down the street and stuff.
I remember this. Ian, do you remember this?
I think I can picture the cover, but I don't know anything about it.
Okay.
But yeah. So, anyways, Sylvester Stallone, bad movie, bad game. I think of it was one of the first examples of I ever saw truly terrible racing game AI, where it was just literally a train of cars.
Yeah.
With a gap that you get in between and out of,
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it was really, really into Burnout, and
the original Burnout 1.
Yeah, and Burnout 2 was and still is the best game to ever work with the Logitech racing wheel on GameCube. I also reviewed that racing wheel.
Yeah.
And Burnout 2 was just the perfect game for it. Because I tried it with Need for Speed and it didn't feel right. And for some reason, they supported Mario Kart and F-Zero with the Logitech racing wheel. You know what you have to do with F-Zero on a racing wheel? To do the ups and downs when you're jumping, you hit the D-pad while you're turning the wheel.
That's weird.
It did not work.
No.
It was bad.
I had one for Nintendo 64. A racing wheel. What, Nintendo 64? Was it Nintendo 64?
I'm sure they existed because there's all kinds of crazy
PS2?
stuff that existed. But
I think I had both because I
Okay.
remember using it for like cruising
Really? Okay.
USA,
yeah,
and then
I had
also-
Cruising USA like N64 launch.
and Rush.
Yeah.
San Francisco Rush.
Nice.
But Gran Turismo 3, of course.
Mhm.
3 was like the one.
Yeah. But that was the most time I'd ever put in with a racing wheel. Was just Burnout 2 on the GameCube.
It's 2018. Do you prefer a racing wheel today? If you have the
I
option?
think the main things that hold me back from playing with a wheel really are just like the logistics surrounding it more than playing with the wheel itself.
Yeah.
Because number one of the things I learned with that GameCube racing wheel is to use it, like you either have to like clamp it to a table or like put it like in between your thighs and
Yeah.
try to hold on
I had
to
a TV tray. I'd
while
put
it's
it
doing
on.
all the feedback and everything.
Yeah.
And so it feels like racing wheels, like to do them right, like you've got to have like this whole kit,
Yeah.
you know, like this big
Setup.
metal bar setup.
Steel
or what-
Battalion.
Yeah, like you just need something to mount that thing on that's solid.
Yeah.
For it to really feel good and feel right. And I don't got the space for that.
Yeah.
And who knows when I'll have the space for that.
Yeah.
And the other thing that really annoys me is that there are so many compatibility issues, like so few wheels that like work cross-platform correctly.
If
And
Don
then
Leone can play
even
WoW
if-
with a controller, anything's possible.
and then
Glenn.
even if they do, it's like this game doesn't feel quite right, or this game doesn't feel quite right, and you've got to make all these like crazy like settings adjustments to like dial the wheel in so it like actually feels like it's matching up with the game.
Yeah.
And so it just feels like there's this whole other thing to where it's like, yeah, inside sim racing they can do that because that's what they do.
Yeah.
But if I'm gonna be more of a generalist,
Yeah.
I don't got time for that.
That's
I don't
funny.
have anywhere near time to get that racing wheel set up to where I'm gonna like the experience. even.
Yeah.
So
Kyle Bossman wanted me to ask you a question. I think I got this right. When's the last time you were embarrassed professionally?
professionally embarrassed. I'm not good with point blank questions, so you
Point
might be
blank.
right now. Like I don't know.
I'll take it. I like it. All right, Blood. As we wind
Oh,
down.
actually, no, I do have a good one.
Oh,
I slipped an embargo by accident like a couple weeks ago.
slipped in what?
I slipped an embargo by accident because
You?
You?
I missed it. And there's sort of a good reason I missed it too, because they put out and I think this thing had already come out in Europe, but they were announcing like a Commodore 64 Mini
Yeah.
for the U.S. And I looked at the email. I was like, oh, this is cool. Like maybe I want to get this thing. And I watched the video, the trailer, and I get through the end of the video, and I'm like, I don't know any of these games. What are any of the games that I have heard of? You know? And so I quickly tweeted about it. It's like, this is cool, but like, what the heck? And then I went back and I saw the email. I'm like, oh crap, that's embargoed. And I got to delete it. And I had to but it was like one of the reasons I missed it is because they got the month wrong. They said it was
Okay.
embargoed to June whatever, and it was July.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh wait, June is wait.
Yeah, not your fault.
So sort of half my fault, but yeah.
All right, Bud. What anime are you watching right now?
Oh, I'm not,
Why?
because I'm out of the loop. I got out of. Well, I mean, one thing is I was out of the loop before all these easy ways to watch anime popped up. So the main reason I was into anime before was because I had a roommate who like headed up like an anime meetup once a month. We'd get together with a bunch of people around LA and watch various anime together.
Like what?
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Tell me some animes that you watched.
Like Haruhi, Bleach, Naruto, just all kinds of. There's like a lot of them I probably wouldn't even remember
What's
the
the
names
last thing you remember from Naruto?
of now. It was starting, probably getting towards the end of the first arc of Shippuden or something like that. Like when he was like just catching back up to Sasuke or something.
Yeah.
Which I can't even remember whether I saw that or because I'd started getting into the manga because I was getting impatient.
Just hearing you say Sasuke, it's giving me good vibes.
But totally had watched the whole like original before Shippuden series.
You watched all of it?
Yeah.
You watched all of Naruto?
Yeah. And then, but the main thing that kind of knocked me out of it was just moving. Like, when I had to move 8 years ago or so, whatever, and like I wasn't around him.
Yeah.
I didn't want to, because the thing, again, because it was before Crunchyroll and even really not too much YouTube back then. YouTube was just basically like Instagram is now. Like you just upload some video of yourself doing whatever around the house, you know,
Hacky
like
sack or something.
The dog videos, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So anime back then was all about torrents and fan subs.
Yeah.
And when I got to my new house, I was like, I don't want to go through setting up all the torrents and everything again. It's kind of iffy. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
So that's basically when I got out of anime, more or less.
Right.
But yeah, we had watched all of Naruto, watched all of the original Full Metal Alchemist series, a lot of Bleach, although Bleach was starting to get into weird places. Death Note, yeah.
Bloodworth. I can always count on you for watching television.
Mm-hmm.
You watch a lot of shows.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of one of those things that fits into my routine of like, okay, we go out, we get dinner, throw something on, watch that for an episode or two.
What are you into right now? What's hot?
There hasn't been that much for the summer. Last week we watched the Yellowstone live thing, which was cool but kind of weird. It was on National Geographic. They were doing a live broadcast from Yellowstone where they had like these camera crews all over, like eyeing wolves and beavers and stuff.
Dude, I want to watch this.
I don't know
Dang
if
it.
you could find it because it was just like a big live event. I'm sure maybe, but it was a little weird though because they were like cutting segments really fast.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, here's this thing. All right, now the wolves. Okay, now the beavers. Okay, now the Old Faithful. And like, it's
too much,
a little
too
bit,
fast.
just soak it in a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
But, and they did have, as you could expect, they did have some pre-recorded segments.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one part was really funny is they had like a LED wall.
Yeah.
In a 100-year-old barn, they put an LED wall, and at one point, a bat had come in and was hanging on the screen.
Whoa.
Just right behind them as they were talking.
I need to find that clip.
And they had a guy come out with a big bald eagle on his arm. They relocated some beavers, and they're like, yeah, when you come back here in a year, it's going to look completely different because they're going to raise the water level. All the wildlife and stuff is going to change because they're going to have a new source of water.
Yeah.
And they released like a great horned owl. They talked about how the wolves have changed the park and how everything has grown back up. They talked about all the volcanic stuff because it's just one giant volcano that could blow up and kill us all at any time.
Volcanoes scare me.
Yeah, but that one in particular.
Yeah.
Because when it goes, it's like, yeah, okay. Half of the United States will be covered in ash, and the rest of the world will probably plunge into some kind of winter.
Volcanic winter. Crazy.
And then Better Call Saul just restarted, so
we won't spoil
watching that
just yet. We got to do like.
But
a
how much else
spoiler
happening
mode.
right now?
Kyle, blood.
Oh,
Spoiler
live
mode?
PD. Lots of
Spoiler
live
mode?
PD happening in this house.
A lot of what?
Live PD.
Live PD?
Yeah.
What is that?
You never watch live PD?
No.
It's like Cops, but it's live. It goes for like 3 hours every Friday and Saturday, and then they've also had like a ton of spin-off shows, which is why it's kind of.
What if nothing goes down? Is it them just driving around?
Oh, there's something going down.
There's always something going down.
But they actually work between like 6 or 7 different police departments across the country. So they've got this huge control room.
Whoa.
So they go from like around close to my neck of the woods in Florida, and then they've got like Georgia, and they've got Rhode Island, and El Paso, Texas. They've got Arizona. So they've got. And what's kind of cool is after a few weeks of watching it, you start to know certain officers because the cameraman is attached to a specific officer. So you start getting some favorites. You start to like
favorite
some of those
characters.
people.
That's funny. All right, lastly, Blood, as we gotta wind it down. Final question: what video game are you most looking forward to right now?
Ooh, right now.
On the horizon, this moment.
Right now.
What do you want to play the most?
Ooh. It's tough because I'm like always so overwhelmed with everything.
Putting you on the spot.
Yeah.
You don't these point blank questions.
The first thing that's like on my head right now, which is it's gonna stink because it's I know something else is going to come up and knock me away from it.
There's no wrong answer.
Is Dragon Quest 11.
Yes. Number 1.
That I can think of at this moment. Like, I know there's like a pile of games that I'm like, my brain's not hitting them.
Above Spider-Man and Red Dead and...
Yeah. I'm looking forward to both of those, but yeah.
Excellent pick. When's the last time you played Dragon Quest? 9? Or did you pick up 8 again?
No, I picked up... What was it? Was it 7 that came out on the 3DS? Well, I guess most of them come out on DS or 3DS, but I think I played some...
No, it's 7, yeah.
7 I played some of 7. Didn't get that far into it, which is why I'm afraid of getting knocked out of 11.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the last thing I put any time into.
Dragon Quest. Best way to end it. On the Dragon Quest note, Daniel Bloodworth, thanks for joining me. That was Syndrome with the Allies. I don't know when. No, it'll be after Easy Living. Yeah. The next one.
Dawn.
There's only one left. The finale. Don Casanova. I haven't asked him if he even wants to do it. So, Don
That's a man of mystery right
he's
there.
Man of mystery.
How many years did we know him before we knew he was married? Like...
Yeah. Serious. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week. See you at Easy Living. Probably there right now.